All right, so here we are with Jaina Cipriano. Okay,
Yeah.
I didn't butcher that name. And you are a self-described visual arts Renaissance woman. A photographer, creator, set designer, videographer, filmmaker, master carpenter. A woman of many hats.
Yes, I do have many hats.
Of course. Did you want to just briefly talk about where you are based in? Boston, I believe, and what brought you there?
Yeah, I'm based
Staying
outside
there?
of, I'm based outside of Boston. This is where I grew up.
Okay.
I have not left yet. Haven't had a reason to. So
Yet.
yeah, not yet. Who knows?
All right. So not Boston for life. Where would your dream job take you?
I don't know. I mean, for me, it's just so important to have community. And like right now, I feel like I have a really good community in Boston. But weirdly enough, I think about Florida a lot. I know everyone is like, Florida is like the cesspool of the United States, but I think there's something really magical there. I don't know.
There is a magic and a smell to Florida.
Yes, there is.
No, I'm Canadian, ignorant, know very little about what it's like to live in the States. But I do know that Florida is definitely the scapegoat of humor for pretty much the entire country. So what would Florida offer you in terms of what you're already doing?
I don't know. I mean, I just think there's something really magical there. I really love the swamps and the beaches, and there's, I don't know, something about it feels so like primitive to me. I don't know a ton about like the Miami art scene. I know they have like Art Basel every year, so that could be cool. But I guess I think more in terms of like where would I live that would inspire me. I feel like it's really hard to, I guess another reason I haven't left Boston yet too is it's really hard to like uproot your whole career and community and try and like transplant yourself. I don't know how people do that, especially when you're freelance or you're kind of doing everything on your own. You know, if you're following a company for a job, like I know friends who like, well, my company moved out west, so I moved out west with them. I feel like it gives you like a little bit of security if you're doing it all yourself. I don't know. I feel like I couldn't go unless I had a plan. Can't figure out a plan, so where to go.
I would like to immediately identify how cool you are for being asked, where would you like to go? And you say, I don't know, somewhere with swamps. That's cool as hell.
I really love swamps.
Does your work take you on the road, or do you get to stay local for most of what you do?
Not really. I mean, I build most of what I do, so I build my stuff locally. I do have plans for like a couple traveling projects, but they'd be so big and expensive. They're like visions for now. They're not like next year, guys, we're going on a thing. I think I've been thinking about this kind of like it would almost be like a road trip that's also like an interactive art piece that I would be documenting. I've been thinking about it for like 3 or 5 years, and I finally like just kind of brought it up to like my core group of people and was just like, just so you know, like this is out there, it's coming. I don't know when, but it's coming.
That's exciting. You're going on tour.
Yeah, kind of like my own touring myself. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you currently are the founder of Finding Bright Productions, and that's kind of a home base for all of your creative endeavors, where you can kind of essentially be in control of it. Do you want to expand more on Finding Bright Productions and as well as Wonderland Studios?
Yeah, Finding Bright is a design studio that I am, we're open, but we're still in the startup stages. We're currently like in the process of growing. And so what we really hope to do is build like really big, out of this world, campy, imaginative sets for music videos and short films and commercials and podcast sets and stuff. Like I was just talking with Angela, who's like my second brain and my right-hand woman, about how we're just like dying to build a game show set. So things like that are kind of like in our wheelhouse right now.
Of course. So you're kind of combining your carpentry skills, your tactile skills, and your ability to see things through in that way and be hands-on towards execution, and collaborating that with art endeavors, and to create a game show set. That is a very, very interesting route of thought. I like, and because of course, to think, yeah, game shows, reality shows, they have these imaginative, immersive environments that they have to be a part of, and I never even stopped to think, who creates that? Who makes that? That's very interesting.
That's so funny, because when I watch stuff like that, that's all I think. I'm just like, how do you build that?
Yeah, because that's why you're doing what you're doing.
Like, where does it go when they're done with it? And like, can I come and take it to my place when they put it in the trash?
Yeah.
And then the other side of that wall is just plywood and 2x4s and concrete. It's so fascinating, the facade. It's very
I love that. I think it's so fun. Yeah.
So where does Wonderland Studios again come into play with this?
Wonderland Studios is more of it's an idea. It's a space I'm working on right now. I'm hoping to open a new space in Boston for production designers and for filmmakers who really want to get hands-on. It's really difficult to find space to build things. It's really difficult. Like I went to school for photography, but in terms of design and production design, I'm entirely self-taught. Like there's really no resources for that. I mean, what I did was I found a couple of like middle-aged men who worked at this plant that I worked at, and just harassed them to like show me how to weld and how to use tools until I felt like I could like buy them on my own and take them home safely. So there's not a lot of resources for people who want to do what I'm doing, and I really kind of want to pioneer that in this area, because I think the like Boston just extended its tax credits, and so a lot of productions are moving from Hollywood to Massachusetts, and so I think we're set for a big boom, and I'd really like to pioneer production design in this part of the country.
So you're definitely recognizing that there's a skill gap.
Mm-hmm.
And the services that you offer and you can educate on will lessen that gap for a future boom that you're discussing. Yeah, well, I want to commend you for being awesome as well.
Thank you.
Yeah. Matt, you look like you're in thought.
I was, and then I just lost everything that was there. And now I got nothing.
It's all right. I'll come back to you.
Yeah. Sorry, Jaina, do you get into props as well, or is it primarily set design? I ask because at some point during that last answer, my brain connected you with the Mythbusters people. And like, that's, you're doing what they do. They just like, they made stuff for movies, and then they got good at it, and then they got to be on the Discovery Channel.
Yeah. I love them.
But I think they seem pretty self-taught in a lot of ways too, or at least like that sort of inquisitive nature that leads to self-teaching. So anyway, that's a roundabout way of coming back to, do you make props? Or is it just the set?
I do a little bit of that. Props is, I feel like, a very different world. I'm so interested in like building spaces, and rather than filling them out. When I worked on my last short film, so I write and I direct. And on my first film, I also did all of the production design, and I definitely, like, I spread myself too thin. It was too much for one person to do. And so a friend of mine brought a production designer onto my team for my last short, Trauma Bond. And it was so cool working with her, because it not only was she like lovely and wonderful and added so much like visually to the film, but it made me realize like a little bit of a disparity in how I work, where I'm very much interested in building these big spaces. And then when it comes down to like the minutia and like the little things that are inside of it, I kind of, I don't lose interest, but I feel like I kind of lose focus a little bit. And she was so good at that. Like, this clock goes here, and I brought this candle, it's going in this corner, and I brought 3 spoons that are going in these tea, like little things where like it really filled out the whole world. And I was like, oh, this is really complementary to what I'm doing. So it might be something that I learn more about as I continue moving, but for me, everything is like big. I just want, it's hard to focus on little things when I just want to work bigger and bigger.
Of course.
That sounds like an opportunity for a partnership.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. If you're interested in high quality production in terms of small details, send Jaina a message. Sorry, Jaina's inbox.
Yeah, she was really great to work with.
Yeah. If hyper focusing is your thing,
if you can't see the big picture.
If you don't want to see the big picture.
I know, I'm cursed with big picture eyes, so
it's a different personality set, right? Certain people are meant for different things. And I do want to discuss your short films. There's You Don't Have to Take Orders from the Moon and Trauma Bond, but I do want to touch base quickly on, again, your approach to creating those big spaces and the aesthetics that you're developing when you do approach these ideas. And from what I've been reading, you really are trying to recreate the sense of childhood dreams, or that gut-wrenching loss of dreams, when especially with the photography that you submitted to one of the Visio issues. Definitely explorative themes, vibrant colors, and it's very visceral, and definitely gut-wrenching is a great word. How do you pull inspiration from your own dreams, of course, but your ability to do it without Photoshop, I think, is one of the biggest selling points or unique points to it, is your ability to create these worlds without post. It's free. And so yeah.
Well, it's funny, I like to tell people when I went to school for photography, never in my life had I ever fallen asleep in a class before, never in my life. And then when I get to photo school, I fell asleep in the Photoshop class like 3 times. It was just like warm room after lunch, and it was like dark with these comfy chairs, and so I never really learned Photoshop. I still don't really know how to do it. And so I think that's kind of been a blessing for me, because it's really forced me to use my hands to make spaces, which I think is great. And I really like that, because I feel like you can really feel authenticity when you look at things. And I kind of like that my stuff feels sometimes like a little rough around the edges, because to me, it makes it feel like it's a real place. I oftentimes can look at like a Photoshopped image and I feel like it can kind of like, it can go right through you, because your brain processes so quickly that it's not real.
Yeah.
So it has to be something really special, I think, to grab you, or you're like, oh, it's not real. And I think those things fall into feeling like advertisements really easily. That line between like fine art and advertisement is getting a little bit blurred. So yeah, it's like, I just like the rough around the edges bits of actually building out a space. So even if it doesn't feel like, I love things that feel like a little off kilter and cartoonish and like Seussian and things like that. So when things come out a little wonky for me, I kind of like it. Like I remember I built a set of stairs for a set, and they kind of like, it was the first time I'd ever built stairs. And so they're really hard. There's a lot of like shimming to get them perfect if like you're going to install them in a house. So they're like a little bit off kilter, but I liked it. I was like, I think this adds to it. I'll embrace it. I think that's funny.
Yeah. Kind of like this hyperbolic, exaggerated, whimsical, garish, but in an almost positive way, kind of sense of fantasy.
Very invoking. Very 90s cartoons have all those, like the backgrounds are always like
slanted, fish-eyed.
Yeah, fish-eyed, very fish-eyed, like nothing is the right dimension. I love that. I'm a sucker for that.
But that's what dreams feel like. Your sense of perception is so dizzying, and it's boozy, and it's disorienting. But when you say you like things that are rough around the edges, I would almost kind of say, oh, I understand your sentiment, but your production is refined. Like your execution is well done. Like there's nothing rough about it.
Absolutely, yeah.
But I understand the sentiment. Yeah.
I do hold myself to very high standards too.
Yeah, and you can tell.
It's a struggle.
Yeah, and I mean, I agree with you that there's something special about doing it for real.
Yeah.
So there's something special in film about practical effects
Yeah.
and in photography about really making a scene. Um, and that added context, like looking through the photos, makes them more meaningful. It's like it's very cool what you're doing, and I like the style and the aesthetic. And there's a sense there's a lot of motion in what you shoot,
Yeah.
and there's a real sense of discomfort and uneasiness from things that are supposed to be affected by gravity and art.
Mm.
It's yeah, it's cool. I like art that makes me uncomfortable.
Thank
And
you.
it does, but it's like it's still beautiful, you know. It's the impossibility of what you're shooting that makes it uncomfortable, and I like it a lot.
Thank you. Yeah, I work a lot with, and this is not intentional, and I honestly feel like maybe I would change it, you know, if I could do something a little bit easier, but I work a lot with contradictions, I think, and like dichotomies, and like trying to marry two things that don't really fit well together, don't really make sense. Because I think that's kind of what I felt like my whole life. So I kind of chased that feeling visually.
To kind of play on that, I did find something in regards to your work where you are sort of mapping your own darkness by bringing your subjects to light. And as a poet, I'm like, I wish I wrote that. That's a good one. It's a good one. But it does bring a very precise image to mind. You are struggling to deal with the pathways of healing after trauma, after loss, the loss of childhood dreams, the rediscovering of self, of womanhood. And that comes from personal experiences, because you know, how are you to create these things if you yourself know not what to look for inside? If it has not, if you have not experienced, then it'll be very something, there's a missing link. And so for you to bring your subjects to light in order to map out the trajectory of your own darkness is so brilliant. And it leads me to think of the dichotomies that you were perhaps describing, but it also leads me to ask you, what is your favorite one to work with? What is your favorite contrast and comparison to work with?
That's great. I love people in places where people aren't necessarily supposed to be, or people feeling misplaced, or like you're wearing the wrong thing to be in the wrong place, or like you're fully clothed and you're in the water or something like that. I love that feeling of, to me, those feel like they're like special moments, like moments in life where you are like you're dressed up and you leave a party and you end up like you missed the last train, so now you're like walking through the city and it's pouring rain, you know, like these moments where you're like, oh, this is my life, like it's like I'm experiencing this thing, and it feels like a little poetic, it feels a little like romantic, it feels a little strange, like those moments to me where everything kind of like is quiet and you're like, oh, it's me here. And sometimes those are good moments, and sometimes those are like really awful moments, and sometimes they're really like gut-wrenching, and sometimes they're really peaceful, but those moments where it's like it's you alone are kind of what I play with. And
it's almost so recognizable, because you in that moment is so stark to the environment around you that you have no choice to say, well, this is me. Whoa. You're eating a hot dog at 2 a.m. at a hot dog stand in like a tuxedo, and you're just confused. It's raining.
There's
And you're like,
mustard
oh,
on your shirt.
Like, and there's not supposed to be mustard on your shirt, because now there is, and you're like, wow, I am in this moment. Whoa.
right.
That's beautiful.
So I also very clearly observe a sense of whimsy in some of what you do. What's your favorite like silly subject?
Favorite silly subject. What's my favorite silly subject?
Yeah. Like when do you aim for silly, or is the whimsy not of that ilk?
I think it some of it's silly, sure. I think my mind usually goes to like, it's just childhood. So like I'm always playing with like birthday party thing. Like I love confetti and streamers and balloons and cakes and things like that. Those just come back for me over and over. I feel like I can't get enough of them. Like sometimes I look at my work and I'm like, you should stop doing, there's some things you're doing over and over and like maybe you should stop doing them. But when they feel so authentic and they feel like they just keep coming, sometimes I'm like, all right, clearly like you are trying to tell me something. Like these objects are trying to tell me something. So I'm like, fine, I'll keep playing. Like we're doing a live stream. I'm designing a set for a live stream that's happening on Sunday, and we're doing like a 500 balloon drop, which I'm psyched about because I've always wanted to do something like that.
It's exciting. You should
so cool.
You should surprise the cast and make it water balloons.
Oh god.
I think
Yeah, that would be exciting.
Mm-hmm.
You'd make a name for yourself quickly.
Like I might ruin their equipment.
Yeah. Yeah. Tuesday balloon drop, Wednesday lawsuit.
It's an interesting week, you know.
Yeah.
It's a regular old week.
Yeah, that's why they don't let me make those kinds of decisions.
Yeah, you don't do the PR.
No. Do you often feel like you're out of place in the way that you're capturing that in your art? Is that a recurring thing for you? I'm sure it happened at some point in childhood to make that meaningful, and I relate to it. Is that an ongoing thing?
Yeah, I mean, it's better than it's ever been. I think I've worked really hard to like be true to myself and figure out where I fit, like where in the world I fit and what my purpose is and the people around me. But I grew up in a cult essentially. And so it was like a very weird Christian cult. And so I was really isolated from the world, but I was also like a really like curious and analytical kid. And so I had a lot of questions about like what we were doing and why we were doing it and why we believed the things that we believed. And I feel like early on that really created this split in me of very much wanting to like, you know, believe in this magical thing that was supposed to be like wonderful and lovely and save me, not only because like it's wonderful and lovely and would save me, but because that's what all of the adults in my life believed. And, you know, as a child, I think all you really want is like the adults in your life, like your parents, to love you and care for you and make you feel safe. And so there's always that aspect. But then fighting against like, this literally makes no sense. It makes no sense at all. And it, you know, as I grew older, it just became more evident that this thing that I thought was really good for me was just stopping me from experiencing the world and experiencing life and experiencing myself and experiencing other people in the way that I really felt like I needed to do in order to like live a life that was worth being alive for. So that I think created that split in who I am. And I always felt very out of place. You know, when you're growing up like this, I felt very out of place in like the Christian world, because these things didn't make sense and were frightening and scary and overwhelming. And there was always this feeling that I was doing it wrong, even if I was trying to do it right. But then on the flip side, you know, it's like I went and hung out in the more like secular world as I would have thought of it back then. And I didn't feel like I fit in there either. So it was kind of like, where does Jaina belong? I have no idea. And that was when I was much younger, and I think I've worked through a lot of that. But those feelings that you get, I think when you're young, it's almost like they're branded on you. And so even if cognitively, like, you know, you're in therapy and you're talking and you're like, I don't believe this, and I know that's not true, that like core feeling of feeling like you're just a little out of place or you're a little ungrounded, I don't know if it ever goes away. It's interesting.
It is.
Yeah, it's almost like the greatest comfort comes from knowing that most people feel that way.
Yes.
Yes.
Like you're not alone, at least.
But I think your situation is very specific to you because again, not the same. But just having been indoctrinated by Roman Catholicism all my life, I every single day feel like I have to atone my sins, do the rosary, go to confession before I can forgive myself. I'm not allowed to feel okay until I tell the Lord, because he's listening. So the cognitive dissonance and the guilt, the Catholic guilt, since like the day I was born, right? But again, your situation is your own and different, but just religious indoctrination in and of itself does cause severe cognitive dissonance. But you know what? It makes us for great art. It makes for great art.
It does. There are silver linings to everything, you know. So
yeah, there is. What was the branch of it? You said it was a Christian situation?
Yeah, I mean, it's very weird. My parents, they call themselves non-denominational. So we kind of like moved from church to church, and it was like no one was ever extreme enough for them. So we kind of like, there were places we would settle for a little bit, and I'd be like, oh, like this is what we believe, like this is who we are, and then they'd be like, nope, and they kind of rip me out of it. So it was very family based. I use the word cult, like there's really no other word to describe it. Like I didn't live on a commune with a lot of people, but it was like my parents kept me very isolated. They kept me very like, they really made sure, like, you know, they curbed whatever type of media I was consuming, and it was all about like religion all of the time. So it's very fundamentalist, very non-denominational. I don't know that. They thought they were better than every denomination. So they're very like right-wing.
Okay, of course. People. And now, but to go from having been from having television and media being withheld from you to now in a sense, I'm kind of, from given the information that you just said to me, I'm kind of extrapolating, but to now doing art so hard in that field. Good job. Taking your power back and for doing that critical thinking, that takes a lot of power and strength.
Thank you. Yeah. I often go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I just think there's a genuine level of badassery there.
Badassery, yes, very much so.
Thank you.
Yeah,
it's a lot of therapy.
For sure. And it's cool. Again, like I'm fixated on your photography. I'm a photographer myself and a writer, but I'm fixated on the photos. And it's cool that you found a way to extend your childhood, or at least like your experience of childhood experiences, for lack of a more poetic phrase. So is that a conscious effort? Or is it just a happy accident that you get to have these wonderful childlike artistic moments?
Yeah, it's interesting. It's not until, so I think now, like I'm starting a new photo project tomorrow, which I'm really excited about. I feel like now I'm in a place where I'm kind of like thinking about what I do before I do it. The work that you see is very much like the artist statement was written after the work, like the work just came. The work was coming so fast that I could not even keep up with it. Like people were asking me when I was creating it, like, what are you doing? And I was like, I have no idea. Like, I just feel like I'm like a vessel for this thing to like move through, like the muse or whatever, like you want to call it. And it was coming and coming. And it wasn't until I had, you know, worked for like a year and then I sat down with these images that I was like, oh, this is what I'm trying to say. So I think there was a lot. I had just, when I started really making this work, I had just gotten out of like a really horrible relationship, and had kind of taken everything away from me. And so doing this work and building these spaces was kind of taking that back for myself. And I think there was a lot of this relationship, I kind of hit rock bottom in it. For me, it felt like it had kind of completed this cycle, like from the mentality that I got from growing up in this cult of feeling like you almost kind of feel like you're like the chosen one, not in like a psychotic way, but you feel like you're very like, you have something very important to offer. That was a feeling that I had my whole childhood, which is not a healthy feeling, and it's not a great feeling. But this person that I ended up dating kind of like completed this cycle with me. And so when I was at the end, I was like, oh, so like everything I've kind of believed my whole life is bullshit, kind of about myself and about the way the world works. And it sounds like a really depressing realization, but it was actually like really lovely, and it was really freeing. And I did it in therapy, and it was wonderful, except it's like, I'm so miserable, and I'm so miserable with my prospects for the future and what I think my life is going to look like. And when I realized like that was all something I put on myself, it was like everything kind of opened up for me, which was wonderful. And so I think when I was creating that work, a lot of things from my childhood were just coming up and coming out of me, because that was like the cycle that I had just worked through.
I can definitely understand and even sort of relate to the grandiose sense of self that you develop when you come from a family that has such narcissistic tendencies.
Yes.
And so I definitely can relate to that in different ways. That's why I like to host this thing. But
you can sublimate it, like you can take it and sublimate it into healthy things. But when you're unaware of it.
But when you're unaware, it could run rampant. Right. So the cycle and the completion of it. Do you think your art is going to kind of change, or do you think that from this sense of realization onward, or do you think it's only going change but only get stronger? And perhaps before you were saying that the process, there was more so the wagon was pulling the horse in a sense. The artist statement came after. And that once you were explaining that you were dealing with those thoughts, that actually makes a lot of sense. A vision is hard to formulate when you're inside of the forest and there's a lot and you can't see through what you're trying to say because you're figuring it out as you're going along, because you needed to come to that conclusion. So do you find now that you've kind of came to the completion of the cycle that you might be able to do the artist statement before? Do you think the clear picture might happen?
I do. I think it's really exciting. I kind of use my art to like track my growth, because I feel like that's the truest way I can relate to myself. Because I can get really like, therapy's great and I love it and it's been so helpful for me, but I can get really like talky like about what I'm feeling and what I'm thinking. But the only time I really can like sink into that stuff is when I'm creating. So I kind of use it as a way to track like, where am I at? What am I feeling? Like, how am I healing? And it is like, this is the first time I'm starting a project, and I'm kind of I still like to keep it open because I don't need to like box myself in, and I want to see just like what happens. I love that, like being surprised by myself, I think is one of my favorite parts of creating. But it does feel like I'm more in control of everything, of my life, of my future, of my past, of myself, my path, not my past. Past is no control there. But moving forward, yeah, I think it's interesting. I think it's really, yes. Yeah, I think you're right. That's something I've been thinking about a lot. So my thoughts haven't fully formed, but yeah.
Of course.
Is this an exciting feeling or an intimidating feeling?
I think those things for me almost always go hand in hand, but I choose to focus on the exciting part of it.
There it is.
Heck yeah.
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 So you have, sorry, Matt.
No, please.
So I am just going to kind of change a bit. Talk about something else, but you do so Trauma Bond and You Don't Take Orders from the Moon are two of your short films. You don't take orders from them. You don't have, I apologize for the people that are listening. I quickly looked at my notes. It's you don't have to take orders from the moon. And Trauma Bond. And Trauma Bond is to be released in 2022, or has that okay. So it's an upcoming.
We're working.
Right. And did you want to briefly kind of discuss, for those who haven't seen it, what You Don't Have to Take Orders from the Moon is about?
Yeah. So I call the story of the last night. So it's about a woman wrestling with isolation and inner darkness and the feeling like she is the chosen one. And it's kind of this magical, realistic story about codependence and how going after what you want can really isolate you. And I call it the story of the last night, or of it's the story of two deaths, I have also called it. The idea that like, when you've gone so far in a direction that's not good for you, even like realizing and turning around can feel like dying. It's kind of either way you go. Like I think about leaving this horrible relationship I was in. Like it was every day I was with him, I felt like I was dying. And then yet to take that step to leave, like you still feel like you're dying. It's awful. Like it's an awful little brain trick. And then eventually you feel okay, but it's this awful little trick of like you giving up all this progress you've made, even if it's horrible progress. So we kind of come in with her on that final night where she gets to decide, like, is she going to be healthy or is she not going to be healthy?
So the complicated path of healing, and how very complicated it really, really is. Because to reflect back on her past moments, she really has to grapple with, I can't believe that time was wasted and I didn't know any better. And I could have made these decisions and I didn't. And that gut-wrenching tug at your heart and stomach when you come to that realization, so visceral. I've been there. And to just have a film just portray that in such a way is artistically beautifully done.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Was it based on the relationship that you're describing, or is that
coincidental? Yeah, it was. It's kind of like an amalgamation. I kind of think of the moon as like this, he's kind of God, he's kind of the guy I was dating, he's kind of the patriarch, like all of these like forces that I felt over me for a long time, just kind of mixing them all together.
The title makes so much sense now.
Yeah.
Like it did, like it artistically, but now it's like, oh yeah, no, you don't have to take orders from the moon.
Yeah. Like you don't have to. She is, but like you don't have to.
When you sat down to write it, did it come out in one big burst, or was this like a long process to get it on paper?
So what I did was I had written a short story that never really felt fully finished, and I titled it "You Don't Have to Take Orders from the Moon." And I showed it to a friend of mine who really wanted to make a film, and I was like, here's something I've written lately, let's make a film. And he said, I don't really like it, but I do really like the title. And I was like, that's fair, I don't really like it either. So I took the title and I kept some little pieces, like there was like the moon and the roller skates and pieces like that I kind of kept and played with. But I tried to write that thing for like 3 or 4 months, and I was like halfway through and I was stuck. I was so stuck. I was like, I just can't get the ending. The only endings I could think of were like police sirens and like these really cliched, and I was like, it's just not right. And I was working as the master carpenter at a theater, at a local theater. And I think it was like our opening week, I went out for drinks with the cast, and then they were all going to go for like second drinks. But I was working a job at the time that had me getting up at 3:30 in the morning. So I was like, I cannot go for second drinks. I need to go home. It's like way past my bedtime already. And I got home and I was ready to go to bed. And then I walked past my computer and my brain was like, I know the ending for your story. And I was like, now, like all I want to do is go to sleep right now. Like, are you kidding me? And so I was like, fine. And when I sat down, I stayed up till like fucking midnight, and I was miserable the next day. But I was like, that's it. That's the ending. So
that's really exciting. I'm glad that you sat down to finish it. Mitch Hedberg has a joke that goes, I'm a comedian. That means that I have to write down jokes, or if a pen's too far away, I have to convince myself that what I thought of ain't funny.
Yeah. I do. Yeah, I do that with poems that come to me.
Yeah. Or all the time I'm like, yeah, I'll remember that in the morning.
But you never do.
Not once, not a single time. All I remember is the feeling that I would remember it, and then that makes me sad.
Yeah. I've lost too many good ideas that now it's like, oh, like now I keep a notebook like in my dresser drawer, like next to my bed. So I'm like roll over in the dark and write things. Like I have notebooks all over I think David Lynch has a quote about how like you have to write it down. Otherwise, like you'll forget the idea, and forgetting is heartbreak. It is.
Yeah.
Mm.
I feel now more than ever like it's self-inflicted,
Yes,
but
we're just
also like
masochists.
sleep is so tempting
I know.
always. So I don't know how to resolve this.
I just have a few more questions for you, and then we're gonna wrap it up around 8:30. And then kind of see where you're at and see how you're feeling with everything. But I do want to ask, what makes a good short film a great short film?
That is a great question. That is a wonderful question. I think it is relating to the characters and being surprised. I go to a lot of film festivals now, and I think you can learn a lot more about what makes a film great by watching films that aren't so great. Like when you go to, like, I just saw Dune in theaters, and like I was like, I don't really have any critiques. Like, it wasn't my favorite movie ever, but it's like, what can you say about something that was done with a, I don't know, $300 million budget and like A-list actors? Like, of course it looks beautiful. Of course it's great. When you watch people's work where like they're just starting out, you can kind of see where like what your brain wants to happen, like where you want to be fulfilled, and then you don't get it. And you're like, oh, interesting. Like, did I want that because I'm like just predisposed because of Hollywood, or is that really like a fundamental part of storytelling? So for me, I always try and focus on just like, I think if the audience can connect to something, they'll forgive you, like if the sound is off or the lighting is weird, or even if although the acting is a little stilty, if they really like connect to your story or your character. I think that for me, that's what makes like a great short film, where I'm like, yeah, you did it. Like I judged like the student film festival, and it was a lot of student films. It was like 150 student films. And they were like all over the place, like they're kids making films, but when they could create like a story or a character, I was like, I'm in it, I'm here.
So a non-cliched sense of humanity.
Yeah.
To relate to.
Something real.
Something real. That's that's very helpful as a creator myself to hear that. Because I do find myself watching films or even reading poetry, and I think to myself, there's something missing. There's like, I have an itch and it's not being scratched. And from there, you can kind of do the research on how to extrapolate, make that better, and go from there. I think that's really helpful.
Yeah, always track the itch. Like, where's the itch going? Like, how do you scratch that itch? Like, there's something over there. So.
Yeah, you learn a lot by just considering what you would do differently, right? That's, yeah, that works very well. Before we get too far, I want to hear about Trauma Bond.
Oh yeah.
When did that start? How did that writing process compare to You Don't Have to Take Orders from the Moon?
It definitely felt more like a real writing process and less like trying to like pull things out of thin air. And especially now that I had gone through the whole process, like I had written something, I had filmed it, I had been in post-production, I'd seen it. I kind of knew like, okay, this is what I need to write, and like, this is what I need to do. But I started Trauma Bond pretty early on in the pandemic because there was nothing to do. So I was like, I'm gonna write my next film. So I wrote for about a year. I did 13 drafts. It was really wonderful, really wonderful. I'm so lucky to work with like such amazing actresses too. What I would do is like, once I think I got to draft like 10 or 11, where I was like, the story is good, like we know what the story is. What I would do is we would have rehearsals, mostly Zoom rehearsals. So we'd have these Zoom rehearsals where we would read the scene a few times, and then I would be like, great, forget my words. And I just want you guys to what's it called? Do improv. And so they would kind of improv the scene, and I would record it. And oftentimes like their dialogue was better than the dialogue I was writing. Because I felt like they were really in the characters, and it really like helped them get a little bit more like autonomy over the characters too. So we did that, and then I kind of rewrote the dialogue with them for that. And then it was about a year after I wrote the first draft, we filmed it.
That's awesome. I have two quick questions about it. First, did the name come first this time? Or did
the name came pretty early on, but I don't know if it came first. I don't know. It was an entirely different story originally.
That's my second question. How different is draft 1 relative to draft 10 to 13?
Draft one has a like an evil boyfriend in it and a big house party. And it has this like weird scene at the beach where like this little girl comes out of the water. And then I realized I was trying to tell two stories at once. And so I was like, just way too much is happening here. And also, when it became clear that the pandemic was not going to be over in like 2 or 3 months, I was like, I would rather write something that I know I can film safely, with like 3 actors rather than I've always wanted to film something with a ton of extras. It's kind of like one of my dreams. Some really like weird crowd scene, but I was like, now is not the time. So let's figure out A, what story we're telling, and then B, like, how can we refine the story to be safe? And I didn't want to hold auditions. And so I knew 3 actresses who I'd worked with before and were really lovely and would fit the role. So I was like, I'm just going to, if you guys want it, like the role is yours, I'm just going to write this for you. So I kind of rewrote it with the pandemic in mind.
That's really smart. And the kind of thing that I would not consider myself. That's like subtly like super brilliant.
I just want to make stuff so bad, just like any way I can make stuff. And it's like, I need to make stuff or I go crazy.
Yeah. And just your description of going from the first film to the second, and all the added context you had for everything that you're doing as a writer in the first place. That only ever grows, right? So like getting reps in, if you can get reps in, that's how you exercise. That's how you grow those muscles. So it's smart. If you have that momentum, like ride it.
Yeah. I just finished yesterday. I finished the first draft of my first feature film.
Ooh.
So I'm very excited. It's a mess. It's a first draft. It's a mess, but it's finished. It took me 325 days, but it's finished.
Congrats.
Wow.
Congratulations.
That's really exciting.
I'm excited. I don't know how I'm going to make it. I don't know where the money's coming from, but
It's
like,
there.
we're doing it. We'll figure it out.
But that's the thing. If you didn't complete it, perhaps the opportunities for it to be created wouldn't appear. But now that it's finished,
absolutely,
anything that comes by, you already have it. You're prepared. And
absolutely. I have people who, will say things to me like, "Oh, I really want to do this thing, but I don't know how to do it." So, and I'm like, "Well, is it ready? Like, are you ready?" I'm ready. Like, I'm ready. If someone came and knocked on my door right now and was like, "Here's $500,000," I'd be like, "Great, I just wrote a feature." Like, I'm ready,
You have great timing.
Like Dave Chappelle, when he had like 8 comedy specials written and Netflix was like, "Hey, do you have anything for us?" And he's like, "Yeah, well, what do you want? I have." How controversial he is aside or what have you, but his approach to just always being prepared is second to none.
No, that's the way to do it. And I think too, like, you miss out on a lot of opportunities if you're not moving. Like, I'm always trying to be creating and be in motion because I think that's what keeps you open to stuff. People often ask me like, how do I learn to do this thing? Or like, how do I get to this place? And I'm like, I don't, just stop thinking about it. Just do it. Like, make a lot of bad stuff, make a lot of like, I don't know, like, just do it. I feel lucky that I'm a person who just likes to do. It's not too hard for me. Like, it's pretty easy for me to not get like tripped up and thinking like, is it going to be perfect? So I just love working. I love doing it. So I'm like, sometimes looking at what I've made, I'm like, oh, that sucks. And I hate that, but it's never like before I start. It's always after. So at least I've made it when I'm like, oh.
Only sometimes. That's an always thing for me.
It gets better.
You're so fun. I love your honesty. You're like,
life, life's messy.
It is. Okay, so Matt, I don't mean to interrupt if you have anything, but I do just want to ask quickly, what is your overall vision and mission statement for what you create for you as an artist?
Yeah, that's such a good question. I feel like I wrestle with feeling like I'm doing too many things at once. Like, I'm starting this photo project tomorrow that's like kind of loosely based around the apocalypse and these like apocalyptic images that I have. But then at the same time, like, I'm writing this like weird, dramatic, surreal coming of age film about like trading God for like a lover. And then I'm also like trying to start this design company because I just want to do big things and I want people to be like, here's a building and here's a hot air balloon. And like, I just want to do stuff that's fun. I do tell myself that my goal is creative and financial freedom without compromises. So it's kind of like my life. It's not really a mission statement, but that's kind of my life goal. Like, that's what I think will make me happy. Like there's just a lot of stuff I want to explore. And if I could make just enough money to live, like I'd be happy. But as far as like my work goes, I think, you know, like I say, I'm exploring like romantic and religious entrapment. Those are things I often wonder, like how that's going to change if maybe someday I don't feel romantic and religiously entrapped, or if I'm not always like going, like, you know, eventually, I know things don't go away, but like eventually, hopefully, you know, in 10, 20 years, I won't be thinking about like my horrible relationship I had in my 20s. Hopefully we'll just be like, yeah, we did enough stuff with that. So I'm always curious, like, I don't feel like I'll ever stop creating. I don't know what I would do with all of my spare time. I don't know what people do if they're not doing stuff like this. But I do wonder, like someday, like what will I be creating about? I keep it really open. Like it's just exploring. For me, it's a way to explore the world and to see the world and to make sense of the world. That's like my secret. Like if you want to know my secret mission statement, that's not like fun for a gallery wall. That's what it is.
That'll be the soundbite. Perfect. Okay, your cat's being really cute right now.
You know. Oh.
Yeah, just yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, steal the show.
Okay.
Can we interview the cat for a little while?
Yeah,
please. He'll tell you all my secrets though. It won't be good.
Really adorable. I have a black cat too, but I had to banish her from my room. Okay.
He's usually much more annoying than this. He's being very chill.
She's being very, yeah.
Oh.
Okay, sorry. That I'll cut that part out. But again, is there anything that you wanted to perhaps mention that you felt that you didn't have the time to, or discuss any future things coming up, or where people can see Trauma Bond?
Yeah, I feel like we covered a lot of ground today. We've got most of the juicy stuff. I don't know if I have any more juicy stuff, but Trauma Bond will be on my website eventually on jainaphoto.com. We're editing right now. I'm editing with my DP, and like, you know, like he went on a road trip and then I got Lyme disease, and then we sat down and we did one editing day, and then he got in a car accident. He's totally fine, but like his car is totaled, and so he has no way to like get to me. And I'm trying to laugh about it. I'm like, I guess this is just not the time to edit. So we're working on it. So hopefully in 2022, Trauma Bond will be out. We're doing cool things, Finding Bright Productions, working on doing some fun live streams, doing some fun music videos, and then I'm going to start creating my own photographic work, but who knows when that's coming out. Has no monetary or business value yet. It's just for me. So it'll be out there when it's out there.
Yeah, very exciting. Could you just very quickly spell the website for us?
Yeah, it's jainaphoto.com, Jaina photo.com.
So you can also go to Jaina Cipriano, your website, and you have services that you're offering, set design, album design, freelance work. So again, if there's any creative listening that wants to collaborate with Jaina,
absolutely.
Go to her website and check out the services that are being provided. Thank you.
Particularly if anybody is working on a game show.
Yes.
The next
first,
please.
Yes.
Let me know, and then together we'll let Jaina know, because I want in on the action.
Yes. We want to build a spinning wheel. So
all right.
Who wants a spinning wheel? Let's do it.
All right. All right. Well, in 1 hour's time, I will have a game show idea prepared.
Okay.
But for now.
All right. Thank you so much, Jaina. It was really, really wonderful to talk to you and to kind of dissect your vision and what you're all about. Appreciate you coming on. And yeah.
This was lovely. Thank you guys so much. This was so much fun.
Thanks. I would also just very quickly like to note that I'm kind of somewhat inspired by your go-getterness, the constant motion, the variety of what you're doing. It's makes me feel like I'm not doing enough, because I would like to be doing what you're doing and I'm not. So that's very cool. So I'm glad I got to meet you and feel a little bit inspired. And I wish you the best of luck finding a swamp to live in.
Thank you. Thank you. Also, I always tell people, like, I think I'm a little crazy. So like, I may not be the best person to like measure yourself up against. Like, I wish I could sleep or relax or take like a week off. So, but you should definitely go out there and do it.
You're real, and that's what matters. And you're doing great, great work. So again, Jaina, thank you so much. And I hope you have a fantastic evening.
Yeah, you guys too. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Peace and love.
Bye, Matt. Bye, Jaina.
Bye.